Hello everyone, my name is Smita Agarwal and you're watching Poetry and You.
Hello, namaste and a very warm welcome. This is YouTube channel Poetry and You are watching Abhivyakti with me, that is Shefali Dubey. Today we have a very special guest with us, Professor Smita Agarwal, who is a professor in the English department, Allahabad University. She is also a poet and a phenomenal singer. Hello ma'am, thank you for joining us at Abhivyakti.
Thank you so much, Shefali, and thank you so much for saying all those beautiful things about me. And I want to specially thank Lab Academia and Poetry and You for having me here. I enjoy interacting with young people. I learn so much from you people. Thank you so much.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm absolutely fine. Wonderful.
So, ma'am, you are a poet. I would like to ask you, how did you begin your journey as a poet?
Yes, that's an interesting question. My journey as a poet. You see, when I was growing up in the late 50s and the 60s, in India, we had no system, we had no procedure by which you could train yourself to become a poet. So most of it happened instinctively and you learned on the job. I was very good with languages. In school, I used to do very well. I used to come first and I was very good in Hindi and English. So I was always reading a lot. So this reading helped me in my journey as a poet. Words were always playing games in my mind and I was putting words together. And there are these stories that my mother tells me that, I was forever translating between Hindi and English. One day she was cleaning a cupboard. I was helping her. My hands got tired and I told her, "Oh, mummy, my elephant is paining." She got very worried. She said, "Arey, what is your elephant? What is paining?" "Arey, mera haath hi darad ho raha hai." This is what I told her. So, these are examples of how words were always playing in my mind. And by reading a lot, by listening to other people talk about writing and poetry, I set the course on my journey as a poet.
So, what was the reason that you chose poetry and not novel writing and plays?
Yeah, now that reason is a wicked reason. Because I was good in school, because I was good in academics, I knew that it was very easy for me to win the approval and the attention of people. So at a very young age, I started enjoying that, that I'm reciting poetry or I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And people are saying, oh, this is a wonderful child. So when I started writing, I realized poetry was easier to put on the paper. Poetry was easier to compose as compared to an essay or to a short story or to a novel. So, and also people kind of, praised you more. Oh, she writes poetry, and that too she writes poetry in English. So this elitist reason was there for me to choose poetry as the genre that I would excel in rather than, prose or the novel.
So, ma'am, when we do something, we draw inspiration from some source. So, what was the source of your inspiration to write poetry?
I belong to Mussoorie. I have spent long months, long periods of time in the hills. So, nature has always inspired me and it's been very close to me. And I have a lot of concern for the environment. Nature has been my inspiration. My father used to take me on nature walks, point out little things to me, whether they were butterflies or worms or flowers. So, from a small age only, my contact with nature and my love for nature started. So, nature inspires me, relationships, human relationships inspire me a lot. because there are so many nuances, there are so many shades in human relationships that make us what we are. And my parents, my teachers, they have always guided me in the proper manner. They have been my inspiration.
So basically, you draw your inspiration from the people around you and your environment.
Yes, definitely. That's the right way of putting it.
Okay. So has somebody been your role model also in this journey?
Yes, definitely, because we don't begin from a vacuum. We don't shoot out like a shooting star from somewhere. Unconsciously, we are imbibing things. So there are always these personalities or people who are, unconsciously inspiring you. In my case, of course, it was my parents. I have to thank them for, bringing me where I am today. And as I told you, growing up in Mussoorie in the 60s, Ruskin Bond had already become a very famous author and he used to write for children. So in school, we were reading him and he used to live just, 2 roads above me. So, like, okay, author, writer, and see what charming stories he writes, what lovely things he writes. So, there was this attraction. And I think it developed from there that, it would be nice if I could also write and I could also, display my talent before people just the way as Ruskin Bond does.
That is great, living just next to such a big poet, and then you are attracted and inspired by him. That is very great. Ma'am, when we are talking about poetry, I would like to, ask you to just read out some of your creation and share it with our viewers.
Definitely, that's very good. I will do it. I would just like to add to the previous question that you had asked me about inspiration. Of course, there was Ruskin Bond. But then when I came to Allahabad to study, this whole pressure of Allahabad being a town of Firag Gorakhpuri, Harivansh Rai Bachchan, Mahadevi Verma, famous poets, that was also, all around me and perhaps, guiding me in my path towards becoming a poet. And then in our department, we had Arvind Krish Malhotra. He was my teacher and as well as my colleague. He also helped me a lot in developing my voice as a poet. And now to get to you asking me to read my poem, I will. This poem that I am going to read for you is called Joyride, and it's an elegy. It is an elegy that I wrote at the death of my father. I was very close to my father. So it is an elegy. It is a 19-line poem which is called a villanelle. And it has a refrain, it has repetition, it is structured. I deliberately choose this structured form as I was dealing with raw emotions at the loss of my father, and I wanted structural control over these raw emotions rather than them becoming very pathetic. So here goes Joyride for Papa. You take us for a crazy jeep ride. You take us for a crazy jeep ride. Show us sights you now cannot yourself see, till daylight fades out on every side. Fighting diabetes, your time you bide. Meanwhile, our zestful guide you wish to be, you take us for a crazy jeep ride. Past Kempty Falls, Yamuna Bridge we ride. The dirt tracks disappearing, it seems to me, as daylight fades out on every side. Autumn's palette is generous. Autumn's palette is generous. Far and wide, rice-sown terrace fields are a lush olive green. you take us for a crazy jeep ride. On roofs, chilies undergo a drying rite. Festoons of corn on the cob wag in the breeze till daylight fades out on every side. At Thatur, you surprise us, you recite. It is a beauteous evening, calm and free. You take us for a crazy jeep ride till daylight fades out on every side. Thank you.
That was a beautiful poem, and your poem and your words made me emotional. And I'm so sure that the viewers who are listening to this poem might have become emotional too. And it seems that you have written it with plenty of emotions that were outpouring your heart at that time.
Definitely, very, very deep emotions, because it was a very complex time,
Situation
losing
for
your
you.
parent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, ma'am, next I would like to ask you, we have seen that you have worked vigorously on Sylvia Plath. So, why did you choose Sylvia Plath and not any other poet? What was the obvious reason?
Yes, I've done my PhD on Sylvia Plath. She was a modern American poet. And the reason for getting attracted to Plath was also, what we call serendipity. It just happened by chance. I had no clue, no knowledge that there was this poet who had written so well. Sylvia Plath committed suicide. She died in 1963. And in the 80s, in the University of Allahabad, we used to go for a lot of these cultural festivals all over India, be it Hyderabad, be it Secunderabad, be it Pilani, be it Delhi, IIT, whatever. So I think it was IIT Delhi. We had gone for a cultural festival there, and I myself was participating in an elocution competition. And one of the young people there, one of the young boys there, he read out Sylvia Plath's Mirror. That is the first time I found out who Sylvia Plath was. And that poem, when I heard it, it's just, because I think prior to this, I was reading Sarojini Naidu, I was reading Rabindranath Tagore in English. So they had a certain kind of language. Now this was a very modern language.
And it was totally different.
Full of detachment, full of control, her metaphors, her similes, the tone, it just attracted me. And I came back to Allahabad, I talked to my relatives, I talked to my professors, and I said I would like to work on Sylvia Plath. And that's how, the journey started.
So basically, her way of writing, her style, that attracted you.
Her strong woman's voice, talking about women's issues. In the 60s, feminism was developing all over America and Europe and England. And she had the courage of talking about all these, nuances and these complex issues that were afflicting women of that time. So that appealed to me, the woman's voice and the woman's question that Sylvia Plath could bring out in her poetry.
So, since you have worked on Sylvia Plath's poems, you must have also translated her poems.
Yes.
You must have done various translations.
Yes.
So, I would like to ask you to just read out a bit of a translation of a poem that you've done.
Definitely. So there is a small poem, Sylvia Plath's poem called Sheep in Fog, written just before her death. And I like to translate Plath into Hindi so that, she reaches a wider audience, so that there is, such a huge readership in Hindi, they also find out about the beauty and the perfection of her work. So I'll read out the translation that I've done, but first I'll read out Sheep in Fog in English. So, Sheep in Fog by Sylvia Plath. This is a poem on suicide, and the first line itself is a metaphor on suicide. The hills step off into whiteness. People or stars regard me sadly. I disappoint them. The train leaves a line of breath. Oh, slow horse, the color of rust. Hooves, dolorous bells. All morning the morning has been blackening, a flower left out. My bones hold a stillness, the far fields melt my heart. They threaten to let me through to a heaven, starless and fatherless, a dark water. And now the Hindi translation. कोहरे में भेड़. ये पहाड़ियाँ सफ़ेदी में उतर जाती हैं. ये पहाड़ियाँ सफ़ेदी में उतर जाती हैं. लोग और तारे मुझे उदास निगाहों से तकते हैं. मैं उन्हें निराश करती हूँ. रेलगाड़ी एक सांस की लकीर छोड़ती है. ओ धीमे घोड़े, जंक के रंग के खुर, मायूस घंटियाँ. सुबह से सुबह काला करती जा रही है एक फूल जो छूट गया. सुबह से सुबह काला करती जा रही है एक फूल जो छूट गया. मेरी हड्डियों में निस्तब्धता थमी है. दूर के खेत मेरा दिल पिघला रहे हैं, धमकाते हैं मुझे एक ऐसे स्वर्ग की ओर, ताराहीन पिताहीन एक काला पानी. Thank you.
You read so beautifully that I like to, keep on listening to you. You keep on saying and I'll keep on listening to you.
Thank you so much. That makes me feel so glad. At this age, it's good to get compliments, whatever I can get.
You are so good, so that is why.
Thank you.
Since you were talking about women issues and feminism, ma'am, so I would like to ask you, what role have you played for the society and what do you plan to do in future for the society? What is your contribution?
Society must tell me whether I have succeeded in whatever role I have played in life.
Or not.
Okay? It is difficult for me to say that I have played this role for society. Nevertheless, I'll try to answer your question. You see, it has always been my effort, it has always been my endeavor to use my poetry as a witness. You see, I believe, I don't think that the writing of poetry in any language can create an upheaval in society. But it can definitely create an upheaval or some kind of a turnaround inside a human being, inside an individual. So that is how I try to use my poetry. I look at the world around me and as a witness, I put my experiences of whatever I have seen and felt before the reader or the listener. So basically, as a witness, that is how I like to use my poetry and that is my activism. Then, since I am very connected with the environment, I do write poems which nowadays people refer to as, eco-poetry. So I do write a lot of poems that bring forward the absolutely brutal way in which we are degrading and, insulting the environment. The corona pandemic itself is a proof of how nature can get angry and how nature's pushback can be so violent that it can destroy humanity altogether. Imagine living in this bubble where we cannot touch the people whom we love, where we cannot come close to the people whom we love. I mean, this is nature's lesson trying to warn us. So, that is how I try to use my poetry to create awareness about women's issues, about environmental issues, about the relationship dynamics. This is how I like to use my poetry.
So there are a plethora of, themes that you write upon, and then you try to create awareness with your creations
Yes,
itself.
definitely.
Okay. So next I would like to request you, ma'am, to please give some sort of advice or a message to our poets and viewers.
Shefali, I'm not a know-all saint. I am not a holy man, that I have seen the world. So it
Still,
is,
you are so experienced. So you could, give a sort of a advice, sort of something, or
now that you're asking, I'll definitely try. The thing that I would like to say to young writers, especially poets, is that you can't follow the path that somebody else has followed. Each person's writing journey is unique, is special, because of the pressures or the influences that are coming in. Each person's writing journey is unique. Nevertheless, we do try to take out certain things which are, there for everyone. So, in that, I would like to say that first of all, never give up, never lose hope, don't get depressed if your poems don't get published, because this is the first thing that every young poet desires, that my poems should leave my diary or my notebook and get out there in the world. And that is not an easy task, that is not an easy place to be in when you are going through editors and publishers. So if you have to face rejections, don't get disappointed. I have faced rejections, many people have faced rejections. We all know that J.K. Rowling, who is now at the topmost writer, she faced so many rejections. There are so many examples all over, in every language. So rejection should not disappoint you and make you veer away from your path. The second thing is read a lot, and read poetry in any language. If you're writing in Urdu, it doesn't mean that you read only Urdu poetry. If you're writing in English, it doesn't mean you read only English poetry. Read poetry in whatever language you understand and read carefully. Try to decipher how the poet is using language, why he or she is placing a certain word somewhere and not elsewhere, what are the images, what are the metaphors, what are the sound patterns. If you read carefully, if you read widely, that is really going to help you in your path to becoming a realized poet. Then meet people who are engaged in the same practice and question them. Be curious. Find out from them. Don't let your curiosity and your inquisitiveness die. Ask them, why have you done this? What are you going to do? The more you meet, the more you understand, the more chiseled your writing will become. So basically, in a nutshell, this is how
what you feel.
should proceed. Yeah. And never lose hope.
That is some great piece of advice that our viewers have got from you. In the very beginning, we said that you are a phenomenal singer.
Ah.
So before you go, let's listen to your singing.
So again, big word is being used, phenomenal singer. Well, I am a trained singer, so I can sing. And since you've asked me to sing, I'll sing something that is related to what we have been talking about. So, this is one of my poems in English that I sing. It's very popular. People ask me to do this at poetry readings and festivals. I'm asked to do this very often. So, the poem in English that I have written is titled Beggary in Bhatyali. And I have structured the poem like a baul song. And Bhatyali, we all know, is a folk tune very common in Bengali folk music. So, using the Bhatyali dhun, I have written this poem, and that is how I sing it. Tananana tan tanana na 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 na. Tananana tan tanana na 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 na. Tananana na na na. Tananana na na na. Tananana tan tanana na 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 na. Tananana na na na. Tananana na na na. Desire a dwelling, burn down your heart. Ask for love, get the boot. Want money, lose your lost penny. Couldn't care less, queen of the world. An open sky, the solid earth. Tin plate, enamel mug. 3 grains of rice, 3 grains of rice. Zest of lemon are all I need for my confection, for my confection. Ta-na-na-na tan ta-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Ta-na-na-na tan ta-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Ta-na-na-na-na-na-na. 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 Thank you.
That was amazing.
So thank you so much, Shefali, for appreciating.
Thank you for being here, ma'am. It was a pleasure. And you know, Abhivyakti would like to call you again and would like to learn so many things from you. Thank you for joining us.
I would also love to be with Abhivyakti again. And there are so many things that I learn from you. It brings me so much of enjoyment and it clears so many issues for me. Definitely, I would love to be with you people, interacting with you people and your listeners again. Thank you so much, Shefali.
So we had a quick chat with Professor Smita Agarwal, who told us that one should never lose hope in life and we should never be disheartened by the failures and rejections that we face in life. With that, we would bid adieu. We'll be back again pretty soon with a new artist. Till then, keep watching Abhivyakti with me, that is Shefali Dubey.